be a sort of a drasha. Just to speak about the Barkochva revolution that took place in Eretz Yisrael with Barkochva. So just let's begin with the Gemara in Tainus, the Gemara that Chavov and the Beis. The Gemara brings down different things that took place on Tisha B'Av. You know that we always take note of different random consequential things that took place at the same time, which obviously is that way because of the Hashgacha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that if it happens at the same day, different things that took place at the same day, so there's a message that's being told to us, HaShamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us something. The Gemara brings down that on the day of Tisha B'Av, so that's when the Chet HaMeraglim took place. That's when the Pasuk says that when the Yidden want to go into Eretz Yisrael, they sat down and they cried. So the Medrash says, Atem b'chisa shalchinam, that you cried for no good reason. You could have gone into Eretz Yisrael, could have taken over Eretz Yisrael, and you didn't go into Eretz Yisrael. So the end is going to be that there's going to be, this day was the day of Tisha B'Av. The end is going to be that on this same day there's going to be a churban of the Beis Hamikdash. So that's the first thing that took place on Tisha B'Av. And the second thing that took place is the churban of the first Beis Hamikdash, and also the churban of the second Beis Hamikdash took place on Tisha B'Av. And then the Gemara says also the churban of the city of Beitar, which took place approximately 50 years after the churban of the second Beis Hamikdash. The churban of the city of Beitar took place also on Tisha B'Av. Agav, once we're discussing this already, you have to mention two other churbanos that took place on Tisha B'Av after the time of the Gemara, which is also interesting and makes us stop and wonder. The expulsion of the Yidden from Spain took place on Tisha B'Av. So we're talking about 1492, when the Yidden were driven out of Spain and had a tremendous turnover in the whole Jewish history, and of course how terrible it was for the greatest, the biggest yishuv of Yidden in the world, which was in Spain at that time. They were all driven out of Spain, which took place on Tisha B'Av. And the next thing that we'll take note of is the beginning of World War I. World War I took place also. War was declared on Tisha B'Av. And somebody who has an understanding of World War I understands that World War I is the beginning of World War II. These are the seeds of World War II that took place in World War I. So again, we stop and we note many different things that are very much negeya to our history took place on Tisha B'Av. But we are going to discuss, we're trying to discuss what took place in the Milchama Beit. The Gemara in Gittin tells us that after the Battle of Beitar, so the Goyim for the next 20 years, they took with the Jewish blood that was flowing, that was all over the fields, they used it in order to fertilize their fields. Obviously, we're talking about literally millions of people that were killed. The Gemara also describes the amount of blood that flowed from the Jewish people that were killed in the city of Beitar, created a stream that ran into the Mediterranean Sea. So we're talking about a phenomenal amount of destruction. It's beyond our imagination even to understand the numbers that we're talking about. But obviously we're talking about a huge amount of people that were killed in the city of Beit. So we're going to go back a little bit in order just to get a little bit of a background to the story of the Churban of Beit. Gemara tells us, the Gemara in Gittin, that tells us that in the time of, right before the Churban of the second Beis Hamikdash, So the Gemara tells over about how Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, I'm sure everybody here is well aware of the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai found a way to sort of be smuggled out of the city of Yerushalayim to meet up with the Roman general, because he knew that ultimately the Beis Hamikdash was going to be destroyed. So he came out of the city, he was smuggled out of the city of Yerushalayim, and he met up with the Roman general. And the Gemara tells over the interaction that he had with the Roman general, and as a result the general said to him, I give you 3 requests. Any one of these requests, all 3 of these requests I'm willing to grant you. Tell me what they are. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stopped and he said, my 3 requests are as follows. First of all, I'm asking of you to spare the life of Rabbi Gamliel, who was the Nasi. Rabbi Gamliel, who was Nasi at the time, his life was in danger together with everybody else. Spare the life of Rabbi Gamliel. That was the first request. And the Roman general told him, by all means, no problem. The second thing he asked was that he should heal Rav Tzadok. The Gemara tells us about Rav Tzadok. Before the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, Rav Tzadok fasted for 40 days because he knew that the Churban was coming. And the Gemara describes what happened to him physically, what happened to him because of the 40 years that he fasted. Ultimately, of course, he became a very sick man as a result of all of this fasting. So the second request was, heal Rav Tzadok. And the Roman emperor said, no problem, we'll heal Rav Tzadok. And we can almost imagine what was going through the mind of this Roman general, listening to the requests of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, becoming now to the most powerful person in the world, the head of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was the most powerful empire in the world at the time. You have 3 requests, anything you want. And what are these requests that you're asking for? You're asking for spare the life of one person, an old Jew someplace, heal another person, another old Jew who obviously has no strength whatsoever because he's fasting for 40 years. These are the kind of requests that you're asking of me. So what already could it be that you have in mind? Obviously, the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai must be a very narrow-minded person. What's your third request? The third request, he says, is Tainli Yavne v'chachomeh. I want you to give me over the city of Yavne. The city of Yavne has all of the Chachamim that were in Yerushalayim and ran away from Yerushalayim because of the siege that the Romans had around the city of Yerushalayim. They ran to the city of Yavne. Tainli Yavne v'chachomeh. And of course, the Roman general was thinking to himself, obviously, it's also another minor type of a request, because what is he asking for? He's asking that we should save a city that has in it these old rabbis who are sitting and studying and learning the Torah by day and by night. No threat whatsoever to the Roman Empire. How could it be a threat to the Roman Empire? So he grants him the third request. He will save Yavne v'chachomeh. Of course, we understand that there was a tremendous chachma, a tremendous wisdom in this request that came from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The fact that we are in existence after so many years, 2,000 years after the Churban of the second Beis Hamikdash, we exist together as Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, and we exist together as a united nation that we all have. We're all a chelik of Klal Yisrael, is all based on this fact that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Tainli Yavne v'chachomeh. Because without a doubt, what this Roman Empire was thinking, Roman Emperor was thinking was that here we have a nation, Jewish people, in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, they spread out throughout the world. And we have to understand this historically. This is an important fact. after the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash. So we're talking about 500 years previously. As a result of the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash, the Jews were spread out throughout the world. And we have testimony to this from a person that we all know very well. Haman HaRasha. The Haman HaRasha tells over Achashverosh that Yeshna Am Echad Mefuza Mefayrot, that we're a nation that's spread throughout the world. And after the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash, we know that there was a Yishuv in Spain, there was a Yishuv in Germany, there was a Yishuv in Turkey, in Northern Africa, in many different countries, there was Yeshuvim of Jews. But there was something that united us, something that kept us all together, something that made it so that a Jew felt identified with the Jewish nation. And what was it? So to this emperor, the answer was a very simple answer. 3 times a day we daven, no matter where we are in the world, we're all facing towards Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim is the thing that unites us all. All of our tefillas are all facing towards this one place. Every Jew, no matter where he lives, is a person that supports the Beis Hamikdash, sends money up to the Beis Hamikdash to bring korbanos, is either to bring korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. If a person has a question of a difficult question, so he sends that question up to Yerushalayim, as the Pasuk says, Ki mitzion teitzei tzayra, Udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. The Sanhedrin is found in Yerushalayim. So everything comes out of Yerushalayim. But perhaps there's even one thing that's even more important than that. The pride of every single Jew, no matter where he was living, he pointed to the fact that my heart is in Yerushalayim. I'm here, no matter where I am, no matter what country I'm in. I'm here because we were driven out of Eretz Yisrael. I say we're stuck here, I have to be here, for whatever the reason. But the day is going to come in the very, very near future, without a doubt, and we daven for this 3 times a day. We're going back to Yerushalayim. So it was the fact that our hearts and souls, our roots were found in Yerushalayim, that united us all, no matter where we were. And the Roman emperor was interested in destroying the Jewish nation. How do you destroy a nation that has such strong feelings of Achdus? The answer is, he'll destroy the Beis Hamikdash. If it's the Beis Hamikdash that unites us, so by destroying the Beis Hamikdash, sooner or later we're all going to fall apart. We're all going to fall into the different countries that we're in. We'll become members, so to say, of those countries, good citizens of those countries, and this feeling of what unites us all is going to fall apart, and we'll become good members of the Roman Empire. That's what was going through the mind of this Roman general. But the truth was not like that at all. Without a Beis Hamikdash, there's something that unites us all. Without bringing korbanos, there's something that unites us all. Without Yerushalayim, there's something that unites us. And that's the Torah. Rav Saadia Gaon, in his famous letter, writes, if you want to know how to identify a Jew, what do we all have in common? It's all the fact that we all keep to the same Torah. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for Yavne v'chachomeho. Not only was he asking for the Chachamim of Yavne, because they're the ones that are going to teach us the Torah, but it's Yavne v'chachomeho that are going to see to it that we Jews stay together as a nation. This is what's going to unite us. It's the Torah that unites us. We're all learning the same Pasuk Chumash. We're all learning the same plot of Gemara. That's the thing that unites us all. And if you're going to give up as if emperor, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai thinking to himself, is going to be foolish enough to think that asking for Yavne v'chachamel means I'm asking just for the existence of these chachamim, of these Jews, he's being foolish. I'm asking for something much, much bigger than that. I'm asking for the unity of the existence of the Jewish nation. But of course, he didn't realize this, and he granted him this request. He gave him Yavne v'chachomel. We have to add one more prat, and understanding one more fact in what was so important, what was so wonderful about giving us over Yavne v'chachomel. In the time of the first base, of the second base Hamikdash, the one who represented the Jewish people was the Kohen Gadol, was the Melech. He represented the Jewish people. How does one become the Kohen Gadol? Well, his father was the Kohen Gadol, his grandfather was the Kohen Gadol, so he became the Kohen Gadol. Or, in the time before the Churban, people paid money to the Roman emperors that they should be appointed the Kohen Gadol. To become a Kohen Gadol, if you were a Kohen, you could become a Kohen Gadol. And if you paid enough money for it, you became the Kohen Gadol. And who are you? You are the, as far as the nations of the world are concerned, you're the one who represents the Jewish people. You speak for all of the Jewish people. Well, after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, and there is no benefit of being a Kohen Gadol, that whole position goes away. The position of Melech, who, in order to become a Melech, your father was a Melech, your grandfather was a Melech, you paid your way to become the Melech, that position goes away. The head of the Jewish people now becomes the head of the Academy of Yavne v'chachomeha. Who is the head of the yeshiva in Yavne? The greatest Talmud Chacham. The fact that your father was a Talmud Chacham, your grandfather was a Talmud Chacham, if you're not a Talmud Chacham, you're not going to be the head of the yeshiva in Yavne. Who now is going to become the head of the Jewish people? The greatest Chacham. So this was a tremendous benefit that Klal Yisrael had. We now once again turn our eyes not towards Yerushalayim, but towards Yavne. And to whom do we turn our eyes in Yavne? To the greatest Talmidei Chachamim in Yavne, to the ones who are teaching the Torah. And they become now the leaders of the Jewish people, and they're the ones who are keeping the whole Jewish nation together. We have to get a little bit of secular history in our minds in order to understand how things progress. As we mentioned, the greatest empire in the world is the Roman Empire. So we talk about the Roman Empire, we're talking about, hopefully everybody has a bit of a map in their minds. So we have to, the middle of this picture that we have in our minds, we have to picture the Mediterranean Sea, because the Mediterranean Sea is the center of the world, Yadua, and we have a country sticking down into the Mediterranean Sea, which is Italy. And in Italy, there you have the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire extends north into the European countries. It extends south into northern Spain. It extends to the west. It has influence towards Spain, towards the area of Spain. And then, when the Roman Empire goes east, it meets up with the second greatest empire in the world. And that's the Persian Empire. Paris Umadai. And when we talk about the Persian Empire, we're going to include in this, we're talking about Persia, Iran, and Bavel, which today is Iraq. All this goes into a country at that time called Partha, which is what the Persian Empire is all about. So that's the second greatest empire in the world, and for many, many, many years, there's tremendous competition between these two empires. The Roman Empire, who was able to conquer the world, but to the Persian Empire, they're never able to be able to conquer the Persian Empire. Hundreds of years later, they're able to have an influence on the Persian Empire, but at this point of history, they're not able to take over the Persian Empire. We as Jews, if we talk about something in general terms, so we have to understand. Living in the Roman Empire is terrible. The Roman Empire is basically anti-Semitic, and therefore usually living under the Romans as a rule is terrible. We're talking about persecution, physical persecution. We're talking about different laws that were made against us, learning the Torah, etc. Many different problems that we have living under the Roman Empire. Living in the Persian Empire, much better. Historically, living in the Persian Empire was always, usually, I'm giving now a general rule because there are exceptions to the rule, but living in the Persian Empire usually was very good for the Jews. When we talk about the Persian Empire, we're talking about the Kufa of the Amoraim, the Gemara that was written, is written in the Persian Empire. The Kufas Haga'onim, many Rishonim, all this took place in the Persian Empire. So living in the Persian Empire for the Jews in general was much better than living in the Roman Empire. If you want to take it a little bit further, to feed you a fact which is very upsetting to a lot of people, one of the reasons for this was the Roman Empire technically was usually a Catholic empire. The Persian Empire is a Muslim empire. Living by the Muslims is wonderful compared living with the Christians, which is terrible. Once again, there are many exceptions to these rules, but basically that's the way it was. So the Roman Empire is always looking to conquer the Persian Empire, crossing the Mediterranean Sea and parking their boats at the harbor of the Mediterranean Sea and traveling east in order to go into Persia. What country do they meet up with when they bring their boats to the edge of the Mediterranean Sea? Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is on the end of the Mediterranean Sea. So the Roman Empire now knows that in order to get to the Persians, they have to go through Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, so they have to conquer Eretz Yisrael. Not that Eretz Yisrael is really what they're after the Persian Empire, but in order to get to the Persian Empire, they have to first conquer Eretz Yisrael, or at least to make it so that the people in Eretz Yisrael are not going to resist them and allow them to go to conquer Persia. We, Jews living in Persia, we were part of the Persian Empire. If anything, we helped the Persians to fight against the Romans, which sort of aggravated the situation. The Romans are coming into Eretz Yisrael. They're trying to get the Jews in Eretz Yisrael to cooperate to allow them to go further into Persia. But the Jews in Eretz Yisrael knew that the Eden that are living in Persia, they're being treated very well. And they're there as part of the government, helping the government to survive and to thrive. So there was always tremendous resistance of the Eden living in Eretz Yisrael and helping the Roman Empire. So the Romans tried doing different things. First, they tried to, like we say, break the back of the Jews that were living in Eretz Yisrael, and they made different savers against the Eden who were living in Eretz Yisrael. They put on them heavy taxes, hoping that the Jews would leave Eretz Yisrael. But we didn't leave. We stayed. The next thing that they figured was, let's try another way. Let's make friends with the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. At the Roman Empire at that time, his name was Hadrian. He said, came into Eretz Yisrael and he said, we are here in order to build up Eretz Yisrael, not to destroy it, to build up Eretz Yisrael. And they asked of the Jews, So what could we possibly do in order to build up Eretz Yisrael? So the first thing they told him was, well, the Beis Hamikdash was just destroyed. How about putting back up the Beis Hamikdash? So Hadrian agreed. And he allowed the Jews, told the Jews, by all means, get together and start putting up the Beis Hamikdash, rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And the Medrash talks about this at length. The Jews got together, we sent out what I call a Kol Kaira, an announcement throughout Eretz Yisrael. People should bring different things to Yerushalayim. We should once again be able to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. But we're told that in the middle of this whole thing, there were a group of Jews who went to the emperor and told him, you're making a mistake. These Jews, the Medrash calls Kusim. These were a group of people living in Eretz Yisrael who are not with the Chachamim. So they went to the emperor and they told the emperor, if the Jews are going to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, so you're building up the pride of the Jewish people. If they're going to build up the Beis Hamikdash, they're going to feel more independent than ever. They definitely are not going to support you or help you. They're definitely going to resist you. It was a bad move that you did. So the Emperor Hadrian says to them, he said, what should I do? I gave him already permission to build the Beis Hamikdash. I can't take back my agreement. So they gave him a suggestion. They said, build the Beis Hamikdash, but tell the Jews not to build it in this spot. You can build the Beis Hamikdash, but build it in a different place. Don't build it exactly the way it used to be, but make it a little bit different. Well, the Jews said, you're allowing us to build the Beis Hamikdash in a different spot. The Beis Hamikdash in a different spot is not the Beis Hamikdash. You want us to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, but to make it different than the way it originally was. That's not the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash has very, very specific laws and regulations of exactly how the Beis Hamikdash must be and how it has to be built and everything about it has to be perfect. We don't make it up as we go along. These are all halachas. So the emperor said, well, if that's the case, I want to allow you to build it. And the Jews said, well, if that's the case, we have no reason to build this other big building that you're allowing us to build, because that's not going to build the Beis. That's not going to be the Beis Hamikdash. And so they scrapped this whole project, so to say, of building up the Beis Hamikdash. Well, where do we go from here? So here, now Hadrian decided, this emperor, Hadrian decided making friends with the Jews is not going to help. We have to go back to the old system of persecuting the Jews, and by persecuting the Jews, so maybe that way we'll be able to break their back of resistance, and we're going to be able to once again march through Eretz Yisrael on our way to Persia. So they passed certain laws, and the laws that they passed were that they didn't allow us to keep Shabbos, they didn't allow us to do the mitzvah Milah, they didn't allow us to keep Taharas HaMishpacha. They destroyed everything in Eretz Yisrael, which would make it so that we should be able to keep these mitzvahs. And if they caught anybody keeping these mitzvahs, so they would have them killed. And as a result of this, the Jews said, well, we can't live like this. This is not a way to live. We're not going to live without Shabbos, without Milah, without Taharas HaMishpacha. So the Yidden left the cities, and they ran out into the forests, into the caves, into the deserts, and there they continued to keep the laws of the Torah. And the Gemara talks about what was going on in these different places, about how the Goyim were busy chasing after us, trying to kill us in the place that we were hiding out. But we hid out in these different places in order that we should be able to keep all the laws of the Torah. And it created a situation, I guess in English you would call guerrilla warfare. You have different pockets of people in different places. They were fighting against the Romans. Romans are chasing them, they're running from them, fighting back against them. There was nothing really that united these different pockets of different guerrillas, soldiers in different places, except for one person. The Gemara tells us that there arose a person who was had tremendous leadership qualities. He was a very powerful person. He was a person who could do miraculous things on the battlefield, and his name was Barkochva. Barkochva, he ultimately became the general of all of these different pockets of guerrilla soldiers in different parts of Eretz Yisrael. Now this Barkochva, the Gemara discusses, the Medrash discusses fabulous things, and the strength that he had, the physical strength that he had, the miraculous things that he was able to do. It was no question that this was a person who had tremendous abilities as a soldier, but he also was a very, very chashuv person. He must have been a tremendous Talmid Chacham. His koyach that came from Kedusha was also tremendous. And ultimately his name was changed from Barkochva to Barkochva. Why was it changed to Barkochva? The one who changed his name was no other than Rabbi Akiva himself. Because Rabbi Akiva said about this Barkochva, Hadein hu Malka Mashiach. He is Mashiach. And being that about Mashiach, the pasuk says, Dorach Chaychav Me Yaakov, that a star is going to come, is going to rise up in Yaakov. That's how the pasuk describes Mashiach. And this person is there, this Barkochva, he is Mashiach. So therefore he changed his name, or maybe we'll call it a nickname, from Barkochva to Barkochva. Now he was called Barkochva.
Is Mashiach ben Yosef or Mashiach ben David?
One more second. So this person who now took control over, he was the general over all of these people in Eretz Yisrael. He now is not known as Barkochva, but he's known as Barkochva. But once again, I want to impress upon the Olam that not only did he have tremendous koyches as far as being a general is concerned, but Rabbi Akiva knew the qualifications that a person needs in order to be Mashiach. So, without a doubt, Rabbi Akiva felt that this Barkochva was a tzaddik, a Talmid Chacham. He had the qualifications that are necessary to become Mashiach. He saw how he was able to win the different battles, so he was convinced that they knew Malka Mashiach. The Gemara in Yerushalmi tells us that there were other Chachamim that argued Rabbi Akiva. They said, no, there's something we don't like about this person. And the other Chacham didn't go along with Rabbi Akiva. But once again, having the backing of the greatest Kana of them all, Rabbi Akiva, we can imagine gave him tremendous koyach. Now, the Abarbanel, in his Sefer, when he talks about Barkochva, he says that Rabbi Akiva held that he was Mashiach ben Yosef. Now what does that mean? We know from the Gemara that before Mashiach comes, there's going to be two different people we're going to call Mashiach. Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef, he is going to be the general that's going to wage the war and fight against all the goyim that are trying to destroy us. And as a result of his efforts, Mashiach ben David is going to die. The Gemara talks about Mashiach ben Yosef, that he's going to die, he's not going to be there when Mashiach ben David comes. But we know clearly that there's somebody called Mashiach ben Yosef. And the Abarbanel says Rabbi Akiva held that he never held him to be Mashiach ben David, but to be Mashiach ben Yosef. It's clear, however, in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Barkochva himself, excuse me, Barkochva himself held that he was Mashiach ben David. Because the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us over that he came before the Chachamim, and the Chachamim said, to him, to Barkochva, you claim to be Mashiach. So if you claim to be Mashiach, so you have to know as follows, that the Pasuk says, B'negeya to Mashiach, that Mashiach is what's called a Meirich V'doin. Meirich V'doin means that Mashiach is going to be able to look a person in the face, and he's going to be able to decide if this person is a tzaddik or not a tzaddik, if this person is chayiv or if this person is potter. Now, let's stop for a second. For us Jewish people, there's nothing miraculous about this. Everybody knows that when a person went to the Arizal 500 years ago, if a person did something that was an Aveira Chas V'Sholem, so the Arizal looked at his face, what we call the Mikubon called Chochmes HaPartzuf. Everything about a person is reflected in his face. His face, the neshama of a person shines through a person's face. And the great tzaddikim were able to look at a person's face and be able to tell a person, these are your milas, these are your chesronis. So the fact that Mashiach is going to be able to do something like this, that's nothing surprising about that. We understand this very well. That's the quality of Mashiach. That's the quality of all the great people that are within our nation. So they tested Barkochva. And they said, can you do this? And he wasn't able to do this. So the Chachamim, and once again, understanding that Rabbi Akiva held that he was Mashiach ben David, was Mashiach ben Yosef, but he, as a result of this, convinced himself somehow that he was Mashiach ben David. So people started getting suspicious that maybe he's sort of overstepping his bounds and he's making himself into something that he really is not all about. Now, the Gemara tells us that he was very, very successful. This Barkochva, he was so successful that he drove the Romans out of Eretz Yisrael. And for 2.5 years, he had control in Eretz Yisrael. He minted his own coins. I think they even found some of the coins in the excavations from Barkochva. He took control of everything in Eretz Yisrael. And what we need to know is that technically the Romans found themselves faced with a difficult adversary. He was a difficult person to fight against. For so many years he was able to fight off the greatest empire in the world, but the Romans decided it doesn't pay. Eretz Yisrael is a little place, like they say, let them keep it. And they're ready to leave. But we know at those times there were different places, different pockets throughout the world. Which we understand the Roman Empire you're talking about, Rome is a city in Italy. This city in Italy controlled countries all over the world. If you're going to allow this little country over here to revolt against the great Roman Empire, as a result of this, you're going to have revolutions in this country, this country, this country. The whole Roman Empire is going to fall apart. So they decided that they have to put a stop to this revolution, and they have to once again take control of Eretz Yisrael. As a result of that, the Romans sent their greatest armies and their greatest generals into Eretz Yisrael in order to once again take control over Eretz Yisrael. And in the Midrashim we have it in the historical books that were written at that time, that the Romans came into Eretz Yisrael, and little by little they reconquered Eretz Yisrael, reconquered Yerushalayim, drove Barkochva out of these different cities, and ultimately Barkochva brought himself into the city of Beta. Took his armies as he retreated from the different places in Eretz Yisrael. He felt it was Kedai sort of to mass them all together in one big city, and there he's going to fortify himself, and there he's going to put himself into a position to fight against the Roman army, and that was in the city of Beta. And the Gemara tells us that for 3.5 years he was in the city of Beitar. The Romans laid siege around the city of Beitar, and there we were. This was the situation. Barkochva in the city of Beitar, the Romans all around the city of Beitar. This is going on for 3.5 years, and it sort of came to a standstill. Nothing is budging. It's interesting if we put together, you have to put together the Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi, different Midrashim. So we know from these different places, different insights, what was going on in those 3.5 years. First, we have an insight about Barkochva. The Medrash tells us that before Barkochva used to go to every one of his battles, he used to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when he davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this was the essence of his tefillah. He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like tisayid v'lek tichsayid. It's almost like you say, don't help me, but don't get in my way either. He knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could create different situations that could hamper his success. Don't do that, please. B'bayna shalayim. It's like we would say, don't get in my way. But I don't need your help. Al piderech hateva, going with natural ways, my army is strong enough, I'm able to hold off the Roman soldiers. That was the essence of Barkochva's tefillah. We're beginning to get a little bit more of what this Barkochva is all about. Maybe what Barkochva became ultimately when the success, so to say, went to his head. But what Barkochva was all about, this is what his tefillah was about. Barkochva had an uncle. Yerushalmi tells us that his uncle's name was Eliezer ben Hamidoi. Eliezer ben Hamidoi, he was in the city of Beitar, and he also used to daven every day. And they eavesdropped on Eliezer ben Hamidoi's tefillah also, to hear what is he saying in his tefillah. And they heard that Eliezer ben Hamidoi in his tefillah was saying, B'bayna shalayim, al tavoi ben mishpat ima. Don't judge us. Don't bring us to mishpat. Please, don't make this into the day of judgment. Hopefully things will become better. Push off the judgment until later. But Eliezer Hamidoi knew that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to judge us right now, everything's going to fall apart. So he was mispal, Yibon Shalom. Give us time. Perhaps things will get better. Things will change. And Eliezer Hamidoi was mispal every single day in the same way. And I guess if he was standing there and we were listening to these two different tefillahs, Barkochva, who's telling the B'bayna shalayim, just don't get in my way, leave it up to me, we could do the job. And his uncle, on the other side of the base medrash, so to say, and he's davening, B'bayna shalayim, please, give us another day, perhaps we'll do tshuva. But there was two different attitudes of what was going on in Klal Yisrael. Well, after 3.5 years, the Romans, this is once again how Yerushalmi tells over the story, the Romans felt this doesn't pay, there's too much energy going into this, we're going to leave. They're ready to leave, and once again they meet up with a Kusi. Now, I mentioned Kusi now, and I mentioned Kusi once before. I don't want to really go into this because this is a subject by itself, but it really wasn't a Kusi, it was a Christian. And the definition of a Christian at this period of time were Jewish people who didn't follow the ways of the Chacham. And let's just leave it like that. It's not like we understand today a different religion altogether. These were Jewish people who sort of had their own slant on how things are supposed to be. So this Christian went over to the Romans and said, "You're packing your bags, you're leaving. Where are you going?" He said, "Listen, we had enough. we see that we can't conquer the city, so we're gonna leave. So he said, no, don't leave. I know why you're not able to succeed. I know what's really fortifying the city and making it so that you can't be Matzliach. Wait a little bit, and eventually you'll be able to get it. And this Kusi went into Eretz Yisrael. He went into the city of Beitar. He went over to Eliezer ben Amidoy, his other Medrash brings it down, and he whispered something into his ears. Eliezer ben Amidoy was in the middle of davening, and we understand when he davened with all of his kavanah. He had no idea that this person was going through this, staging this type of a situation where he's whispering into his ear. He's continued his davening. But the people, the soldiers that were standing around, they see that this Kusi, who is the enemy of the Chachamim, is speaking to Eliezer Amidoy. What's going on? What do they have together? Something there. They must be working out something together against Barkochva. So they go and they tell Barkochva, something is going on. Your uncle, Eliezer Amidoy, he davens the whole day. And we thought he was davening for the Jewish people, but look, he has something to do with these Kusim. Better find out what's going on. So Barkochva calls to him, his uncle, Eliezer Amidoy, and he says, what do you have to do with the Kusim? Kusim, what Kusim? What Kusim? I have nothing to do with them. I have no idea what you're talking about. Barkochva lost his temper, and the Gemara says, with one swift kick, he killed Rabbi Eliezer ben Amidoy. So the Gemara came out of Baskel and said, you put out the light, the one spark of energy, the one spark of brightness that there was in the world, you destroyed. As a result of this, the end is going to be that now darkness is going to descend over all of Eretz Yisrael.